Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you're in the world. Welcome to my daily Instagram Live / YouTube, depending on which platform you're watching this on. Today we are studying the book of Deuteronomy, and we are on chapter 18. So this is our chapter review. I will go over the parts that I felt like were the most important, and then I will open up the discussion to the comment section so that we could discuss it together. For those that have been following this series, welcome back. And so those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, feel free to catch up on my YouTube page. I do post the recaps on my YouTube page. So if you're just tuning in and this is something that interests you and you want to know more, all of it will be posted. So without further ado, let's get started. Deuteronomy Chapter 18 is a very special chapter because this is the first time that Jesus is actually mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy directly. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But I think that it's very important to note that the presence of Jesus was very much so a thing in the Old Testament. Jesus is not just a New Testament character. There was a lot of allusions that were made about Jesus long before Jesus ever stepped foot on earth. It's a very important thing to note because that shows consistency in the Bible. Okay, so I'll go over a few other things that it noted before we get to the Jesus thing, even though I'm very excited to talk about that. So it says that it goes a little bit more into detail about the Levites and their relationship with God, what is entailed for them. It says that it reminds us that basically the Levites didn't have an inheritance in the form of property or anything, but their inheritance was different, that their inheritance is the Lord. The Lord is their inheritance. So they had, although they didn't have a physical inheritance, they had nothing to worry about because the Lord was always going to make them okay. He was always going to look after them. And he did that in the form of many different ways. He made sure that all the other tribes did their part to pitch in and take care of the Levites equally. So that's where the tithes and offerings came from. The Levites were to benefit from that. They, other than that, and then the Levites in return, they were to serve. So they were in such a high position of power because the Lord trusted them to be the representation of his word. He said that he was going to give the Levites his word, and it was their responsibility to minister to the people as needed. And that was all throughout all of the towns of Israel. So wherever the Levites went, they always had a home in ministry. And then the next subsection, verses 9 through 13, go into occult practices and basically God's warning of staying away from those kind of things. I know that there's a lot of things out there that are of the world, right? You have tarot cards and psychics and cult organizations and that kind of stuff. The Bible warns you about those kind of things because he does not want you to be deceived in any way, shape, or form. There are cults that lead their followers to sacrifice even their own children. It says, "Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft or casts spells, or who is a medium or spiritualist, or who consults the dead." This is an important warning for God because why? Those type of people are not of God. They do not get their powers or their divine powers and readings, abilities from God. And when they're not getting their powers from the source that is always 100% and is correct every time, then it's kind of like gambling. You're gambling with the possibility that whatever message you get may or may not be true. And, you know, if it's true, okay, you might have survived that one, but what if it wasn't? And you were led to believe something that changed the direction of your life because you heard from a psychic or from a medium to do something specific, you know? So God is totally against that. We don't need that. We don't need to be guided into our future in any way more than what the Bible has already given us. And the Bible is a better guide to our future than that kind of stuff, because it's not a superficial message. It's not a selfish message either. It's the bigger picture, and it prepares us for what really does come next, rather than, I don't know, reading your horoscope and saying that you're going to find the love of your life tomorrow or whatnot. So be very, very careful with that kind of stuff, as the Bible warns us specifically about that. It's not me making it up. It's not me saying that I think that these people aren't capable of being factual. They're not going to be exact in their readings. This is not what it's saying in any way, shape, or form. It's saying that these people may have those powers, but it's not from God. So stay away. And it also says, just to be clear, in verse 12, anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. Because of these same detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you. You must be blameless before the Lord your God. So there's absolutely no confusion that is not what God wants us to do. Okay, and then it talks about the prophets. So this is the part that I was excited about, and what I said exactly is this is our foreshadowing of what is to happen in the New Testament, that we will meet Jesus and we will learn the prophet that it talks about in this chapter. So verses 14 through 21, it talks about the prophet. And it says, verse 14, the nations you will dispossess, listen to those who the nations you will dispossess, listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. We just talked about that. Then it says, 15, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you. For your fellow Israelites, you must listen to him. For this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, let us not hear the voice of the Lord your God, our God, nor see the great fire anymore, or we will die. If you remember, it was talking about the gathering of the Israelites at Horeb. And God wanted to give them a message, but they were so scared to hear from God himself, because when God spoke, it was not just a regular whisper. It was not just a regular sound. The ground would shake. He's so mighty and so powerful that they did not even want to face him. They didn't want to put themselves at risk for possibly dying at the power and the might that he and his voice has. So they said, listen, we don't want to face God, but Moses, can you go face God and just relay us back the message? So that's what happened. And then Moses went and he relayed the message to the Israelites of what God said. But God's saying, I acknowledge that, and I said that was fair. So I'm going to do you something extra. I'm going to give you a prophet that is going to be able to speak to you at eye level. And he's going to give you my message. He's going to give you my word. You're not going to be confused. You're going to know that it's him. And then it says, verse 17, the Lord said to me, what they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among the fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who does not listen to the words that the prophet speaks in my name. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name of anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death. So in layman's terms, basically he's saying that I'm going to send a prophet, but also there's going to be other people that are going to try to portray to be the prophet. And if they're doing that, they will be put to death. That is obviously detestable on the plan. You can't just try to be a phony and fake your way into the position of prophecy, especially because that gets in the way of God and what he wanted for his people. That is deception. So, then it says, you may say to yourself, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? And here's how we know whether or not it is a prophet or not. I spoke about this in previous lives, so I'm glad that I finally found the verse. So this is verse 21. How can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has spoken. That prophet has spoken that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, so do not be alarmed. In other words, a prophet is speaking from a message that was given to them by God. That means that it will come true. So if somebody claims to be a prophet and they say a prophecy is going to happen and it does not happen, that is not from God. And that is not a prophet. That's a false prophet. So that is that for chapter 18. I'm going to now go ahead and open up the discussions in the comment section. So if you have anything to add to that, or if there's anything that you want to clear up, now is the time to do that. Okay, are there any prophets today? And then someone says false prophets exist. J-Ro says false prophets exist. This has caused a fear and overcorrection in the church. False prophets definitely do exist. However, good question, do prophets exist? And I believe that they do. Well, the Bible does tell us that there will be more, and there will be more prophecies to fulfill. So, also, there is the possibility of modern day prophets. Like, for example, a lot of people feel like Martin Luther King is a prophet. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily biblical, obviously, but they say that Martin Luther King alluded to having a dream that one day that the world, race, they will be created equally, they will not be separated in segregation and whatnot. That did eventually come true to a certain extent. But does that mean that he's a prophet? No, because not everything that he said came true. But I think that the prophecy is more in terms of something on a bigger scale. But yeah, that would be technically like a foreseen, or he was right in his guess or his dream or whatnot. But are there prophets right now that are spot on every single time? Not that I know of. So I don't know. Great. No need to be alarmed. That's what it says. Is there a timeline for prophecy? That's a good question. Yes, definitely. So usually, at least in the Bible, when we're talking about biblical prophecies, right? They are given the who, what, when, where, and why. So sometimes they don't give you the when, which is, at that point we don't have a timeline. But, it might say, for example, and when we do get to then Deuteronomy, there is a time on the curse that was given, and that was a prophecy, that they would be to be cursed for 400 years, for example. So yes, sometimes there's timelines, but sometimes it's just like, for example, Revelations. Revelations never gave us the exact when that prophecy is going to be fulfilled. So that's really like the last prophecy that we're waiting to be fulfilled, because all the other ones that were a part of the Bible have already came to pass. I also wanted to point out that, for example, it's talking about the prophecy of there's going to be a prophet and he's going to, she's going to have my words. I'm going to put my words in his mouth, and, you're to listen to him, etc., etc. In other words, Jesus Christ. This book was written around, they say about like 1500 BC. That means 1500 years before Jesus even stepped foot on the earth. So it's not like Jesus was even a thought of being born yet. So also I believe that I did my research on this, so the first book of Deuteronomy can be found all the way back to like 600 BC. So if that's the case, then, like I said, that's still even 600 years before Jesus Christ walked the earth. So, yeah, definitely is to show that it's not just a presumptuous book that they wrote and then they were like, oh, okay, they wrote from Jesus's time, and they were like, okay, well, Jesus came and he said this and he said that. In the Old Testament, or not in the Old Testament, but in the times of what would be the Old Testament, this happened and this happened and this happened. No, the Old Testament already existed, and then Jesus walked the earth. So that's why I do put a lot of stock into the Bible, because it has not only stood the test of time, but for as historic and dated as it is, the things that were already put out into the universe have added to it and have came true, years and years, thousands of years later. So that definitely says a lot. Self-proclaimed prophets are the problem. Absolutely. And I don't even think that it's necessarily a motive thing, because, like I said, listening to somebody that claims that they're a prophet is a gamble, because even if they believe that they have the power to predict something that's going to happen, let's say that they have this gift, quote unquote, that is given to them from something. They don't know where it's from, but for some reason they dream about things that happen, and they, just have these visions. They feel like they have some kind of psychic abilities. That could change at any minute unless it is from God. So, God can come and intercept something that is in their mind supposed to come to pass, because they are not, it's not in the agenda for them to be correct every time. God can easily change that narrative for them. So if you put all of your bets on somebody that is not meant to be that consistent, like the Word of God is, then you could easily be very disappointed. So it is in our best interest to understand the limitations on the earthly, spiritual manifestors or people with gifts. Okay, and J. Rose says, and he himself gave some to the apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. Ephesians 4:11. Okay, Lemire says, the Levites had to minister in the name of the Lord, and prophets prophesied in the name of the Lord. Every has, I think that's a typo. Every has to a minimum be under the Lord's jurisdiction to be considered. Absolutely. But that's the thing. Some people may be deceived, so they might think that they're serving the Lord, but if you do not have a relationship with the Lord, if you don't know what the Lord sounds like because you don't know what his word is, you don't have any clue what that is, you could be somebody that is just under attack. So that's why it's very important to develop a relationship with God so that you will understand and you will know who is speaking to you and why they are speaking to you, whether it's of him or not. And honestly, that's why a lot of these cults thrive. So what is a cult? And we'll kind of end on this. A lot of these cults use the name of God to get off their own selfish, I guess, agendas. They say that they are God, they are the second coming of God or whatever. And they minister to a bunch of people that are probably seeking some kind of relationship with a higher power. And they feel like that person is leading them in the right direction. But unfortunately, that person is using the word to deceive them. And because these people have not themselves read the Bible, they didn't see it coming. They didn't know what to look out for. Because what we just read in Deuteronomy 18, it specifically warns us about such practices and that kind of thing. But, like I said, not everybody has the luxury to have been raised in places that they had access to the Bible or any of the words of God. So they don't know, and they don't know better. So obviously the leaders are going to be in for a really rude awakening when they have to face judgment. But those that have been deceived could have, that could be prevented if you just read the word and develop a relationship with yourself. It opens up a lot of understanding. It opens up a lot of, when you know the word in context, it's very hard for someone to manipulate you through the word of God. Because unfortunately, a lot of the people that use God's name to manipulate, they know the word inside and out. These people that are doing very satanic practices and the people that hate God, they hate religion, they hate those stuff, they know the word very, very well, and they use it specifically to manipulate other people. So if you want to protect yourself, I highly, highly recommend to know the word yourself. And that's what we're doing here. So with that being said, I'm going to end here just because there seems to be a lot of comments, but there's no way that I would be able to get through all of them because they're moving very fast. So I'm going to end here, but I am finishing uploading all of the previous chapters from chapter the previous chapters of my recaps. I'm finishing uploading them today. So like I said, if you're just tuning in and this is something that caught your interest, you're interested in seeing more, all of these series are going to be finished uploading to my YouTube. So If I didn't get to your comment or your question, feel free to add it to the comment section, and I periodically read those comments as much as possible and answer them as much as possible as well. And for those of you that keep on coming back and are very much a part of this review just as much as the other person, feel free to answer those questions and comments as well. You know, this is a group effort. This is, you know, we're kind of like doing this together. So feel free. I'll chime in as much as possible. But thank you guys so much for tuning in and for contributing to this conversation. I will see you guys tomorrow. Ciao.